When I was standing in that office, man, it's so divine. Scott looked at me and he said, "You look like you should be the LL Cool J of our group. I want you to be down with us." Like, from that moment.
Welcome to the next episode of the Why Not Me podcast with me, your host, Mike Jackson. Our guest today is one of my all-time favorite people. He's just so freaking cool. And you know what they call him? They call him DNice. We're going to talk to him from his days from the Boogie Down Productions, growing up in New York with Scott LaRock and KRS-One. And we're going to follow his journey all the way to what you know about him now with Club Quarantine, the incredible photographer, the awesome DJ, just all the cool things that make up the one and only DNice. So I'm going to stop talking to you and let you hear my conversation with him. DNice on the Why Not Me podcast with Mike Jackson coming up next. What's up, man?
Bro, so happy to be here with you.
Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for saying yes. I've known you for a long time.
Yes.
I've seen, and I knew of you long before I met you because you've had such an illustrious career and such a journey. But Why Not Me podcast is really about journey, and it's about origin story and how did you get from point A to point B? How did Derek Jones become DNice?
Yes.
So let's start with Derek Jones. You were born, got it right here, June 19th.
June 19th.
I won't say the year.
You could say the year. I'm proud of that, man. June 19th, 1970, born at 11:11 a.m. So I was born to be this free Negro. Born on Juneteenth. I was 11:11 a.m.
That's crazy.
The numbers
Juneteenth.
are all aligned.
Well, I'm just 2 years behind. I'm March 12th, 1972, 9:44 a.m., the city of Philadelphia.
You know what's interesting though, man? Like, not to fast forward too much on the story, but a hard part of where my journey ended up, like just before COVID, I was turning 50, and that was a very hard thing. Like, man, to be in like DJ culture, hip hop culture, turning 50.
Yeah,
it was like, man, I didn't want to see myself being that way at 50 years old. Like, I thought it was gonna be uncool. Like, I don't want to do that.
But
and then life changed. So that's why I'm actually proud now to actually say my name, because I never imagined like being at this age as a 54-year-old man, but relevant to an 8-year-old kid, to someone's 80-year-old grandmother, doing what I love with just music, bringing people together. So, yeah, man, June 19th, 1970.
So, born in Harlem, raised in the Bronx?
Yes, born in Harlem Hospital.
Siblings, brothers, sisters?
I didn't grow up with any siblings. I grew up with two of my cousins who we all kind of lived together.
Okay.
So if I had siblings, it would be those two.
Like literally lived together in the same house?
Yeah, we lived in the same house
and
with
parents,
my great-grandmother.
everyone was, mom and dad were in the house?
No.
Tell me about that. Tell me about where were mom and dad? Like, just tell me your early days.
Well, didn't know my father until I was like 7. You know, he was kind of in and out of my life. So no real relationship with him. My mom was, yeah, still, no.
That was just.
Oh no, that would be a different podcast that we would have to talk about, which is why I have this affinity for great fathers. You know, like I try to always surround myself with people that are great dads. You know, because I wanted that example, and I do believe that I'm a great father. You know, like I spend time focusing on my kids. I mean, my oldest daughter is one of my attorneys. You know, like,
oh wow,
you know, so
what
that's
a proud moment.
And we talk every single day, even when we're not talking about work. We talk about life, and we talk about the journeys that we're on, and it's beautiful. But no, I didn't grow up in the household with either parent. You know, my mom was around.
So what was the dynamic? So the people inside the house when you were 1, 2, 3 years old, like when the lights were off and people were sleeping, it was grandmom, two cousins.
As far as back as I can remember, which is roughly around, I remember when I was around 5 years old, it was always my great-grandmother. My grandmother lives in North Carolina, but it was my great-grandmother's apartment, but there was always love.
Sure.
You know, my mom had me at a really young age, you know, I think she was like 17 or 18 years old, and so, yeah, and that was kind of the thing back then in the 70s. A lot of parents would just drop their kids off with grandma or great-grandma, and that was pretty much it. So
literally my adolescence you're describing.
I know, right?
Literally. My parents were working.
Yeah.
And we had to go Aunt Margaret every day.
Listen, there's some times that I wished that things were a little bit different. But then to change that part of my journey will change where I am right now, and I happen to love where I am in life. You know, I think that those stories and that journey kind of made me who I am, a very compassionate person, a loving person. You know, I love family, but I also love my friends, and I know the importance of like people that are outside of your immediate family. When you find that connection and you find that love and you get it from them, it's just as strong.
I love chosen family.
Yes.
You know, being an only child, you know, I was estranged from my father the later part of my life as well. I love the shit out of my mom, rest in peace. But like my tribe, my community are the people that I've chosen and they've chosen me. And to your point, I think like it's some of the most beautiful relationships you can have.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because we choose each other every day. It's like a marriage.
It really is.
You know what I mean? Like we will be here for you. I choose you every day. You can always pick up on the phone and call me. So I love that. I love that for you and for me and for anyone.
Absolutely.
So, okay. So this is the home environment. You're young, growing up. Obviously music and art and photography has become your calling card. Was that something that was like around the house at a young age?
Yeah, so at a young age, so we were kind of bounced between my great-grandmother's apartment and two of my aunts, you know, and they lived in Manhattan, one in Manhattan, one in Riverdale in the Bronx.
Yep.
But they would always have music, you know, like my aunt and her and her husband, they had like this Cadillac Seville with the slanted back in the early 80s.
Yep.
And he was just chilling. It was gold with the belts on the back of
Fresh.
the trunk. And he would always be driving with the whispers playing. So I grew up hearing this music. Or my aunt, you know, who lived in the Bronx, you know, she had like the old record player, you know, where you lifted it up and, you know, the speakers were a part of it.
Yeah.
But on the side of it, she would have records leaning against the wall. And I would see like Melba Moore and Teddy Pendergrass and Michael Jackson. So like all of those songs kind of became the soundtrack of my life because I used to sneak and listen to them, you know, and that was, and plus they would always blast music. You know, there was always music playing in the homes of like my aunts, no matter what day it was. It didn't have to just be a Saturday morning. It was just always like music playing, you know, and that's where my love of music stems from.
As a father of 3 young children, I often believe that environment curates taste.
Yes.
And I live in Texas, and my wife played that Fast Car remake.
Oh, yes.
The country version?
Yes.
And my kid, and all of a sudden I'm in the car with my kid and he's requesting Fast Car. And I was like, oh,
which
wow.
version did you play for him?
I just was like, oh, yeah, Tracy Chapman. And I put it on. He's like, that's not it, Daddy.
That's not it.
I was like, what? And I put on the country version, appease my kid. But I was like, we're not growing up like this.
No.
And then from that moment forward, every time at the house or in the car, I'm just playing old school hip hop, soul music. Because I'm like, I got to curate this vibe, curate this soul. So definitely environment informs a lot.
Yeah.
So school-wise, like, I mean, I know at 15 is when like the journey really began.
Yeah.
But prior to 15, like elementary school, middle school, into high school, like what was your life like? And was music becoming more prominent prior to 15? Like just
music was always, you know, I tried playing a bunch of instruments, man, from the recorder to saxophone. Like I was always into music, trumpet. A lot of I never fully mastered anything because I couldn't take the instruments home.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, we didn't have money like that, you know, no real support, and no one really understood what I wanted to do in music. So a lot of my childhood journey in terms of music was just about being like a listener. I would save up money. I saved up money to buy like, you know, Run DMC, Raising Hell album, a 12-inch from Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick, The Show.
Yep.
Like, and there was this group, I don't even remember the name of the group. They had this song called One Bad Apple.
I definitely don't know.
It was like this kind of pop group. Those are like the first 3. Oh, and Eddie Murphy, Delirious cassette. I bought all of those like around the same time. But anyway, going to school, I went to an extremely rough high school in the Bronx called Taft. Man, I'm glad I made it out of there. But like it was rough because I also had music while I was in high school.
Were you a tough guy?
No, I was never really a tough guy, man. I'm a lover, not a fighter.
I got that sense. Yeah. I got that sense.
Nah, plus, you know, I didn't grow up that way, man. I really grew up in a household full of women, you know, and so that's where a lot of that compassion comes from, you know, just, I would listen to my cousin coming home from a date, and I would have to hear all the craziness that she was saying to her friends about this date. And, my great grandmother was, single, but she would also share stories of like growing up in North Carolina and with my grandfather. And it was, I would always hear these stories. So I was never really a tough guy. That wasn't my vibe. I was a nerdy kid. I loved school. I actually didn't want to, be in the music industry.
What did you want to be in?
I actually wanted to be an attorney. Like I wanted to go to law school, but I did not have that kind of support. We weren't making that kind of money.
Right.
And then, just on this journey where my cousin asked me to bring him some food. He worked at the men's shelter in the Bronx. And he asked me to bring him some food, and then, brought him some food over, and he's like, hey, I want to introduce you to someone. Took me into the office and introduced me to a social worker who was a DJ by night by the name of DJ Scott LaRock. And then KRS-One lived in the shelter. So
Really?
That's literally how I got into the music business.
And that's the birth of Boogie Down Productions.
Yeah, well, the group existed before I was there.
Okay.
But that's when Scott asked me to be a part of the group. I had never written like a hip hop lyric. I loved R&B music.
So why would he ask you that question in that moment?
When I was standing in that office, man, it's so divine. Scott looked at me and he said, you look like you should be the LL Cool J of our group. I want you to be down with us. Like from that moment.
Never seen you do anything artistic at all.
Never seen me do anything. He taught me how to DJ. Look. Yeah, just literally based on like, he looks like he should be in our group.
Yeah.
That also caused like a little bit of conflict with KRS and I, because, and rightfully so, like this dude was in the trenches.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing all of the battles. And then all of a sudden after, doing all of the battles, and Scott pulls this young kid to be a part of the group, and so I understood, later on in life I understood. When I was young, I was always like, yo, bro, like, come on.
How old were Scott and KRS-One at that point?
Roughly. I think Scott was like around 24.
Okay. They were men. They were young men.
They were young men, yeah. And, Scott knew that I loved music. We talked about it, but like I said, I wasn't really like the big hip hop guy. I loved songwriting. I was influenced by New Edition and like, for my generation, and I wanted to be a songwriter. I used to go in the bathroom. We lived in this one bedroom apartment, and my great grandmother and I slept in the living room. My cousin slept in the bedroom with her son and her boyfriend, who was the one that asked me to bring him some food to the shelter.
Right.
But I used to, for a little bit of solace, I used to go into the bathroom and sit on the floor and just try to write lyrics to, not rap though. I was trying to write like R&B lyrics.
And R&B lyrics.
I wanted to be this songwriter. And little did I know that that love of just music in general would take me into hip hop.
Isn't it crazy to look back on like young Derek?
Yeah.
And think about dreaming and like just kind of pushing things out into the universe, not even knowing you're doing it. And then to be able to look back and point to that moment and be like, that's one of those critical moments that informed me to be who I am today.
Absolutely.
A lyricist, an artist, a dreamer still. All these why not me moments. So, okay, 15, meet Scott, meet KRS-One, you join the band. How soon after that do you become DNice? And who named you DNice?
I became DNice in the studio. At this point, I was like 16, going on 17. And we were making a song, our first real single as Boogie Down Productions, South Bronx. So we were in the studio working on that song at someone's apartment in like Queens. He had like the 16-track studio. And Scott and I were in there. Like Scott really did the beat. I was just learning, just watching him put this together. And at the end of the song, KRS came in, did his vocals. Then at the end of the song, there's this part where Scott was like, Boogie Down Productions. And he was naming us individually. And before he even said anything, he was like, well, what's your rap name going to be? And like, in the 80s, everyone was Ice. Everyone, Mixmaster Ice and, Vanilla Ice. And everything was Ice.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I'll be D-Ice. Literally, that's what I said. But when he was recording it, he accidentally said DNice. and then we just left it in there. That's literally how it happened.
That's fucking wild, man. Call you DNice.
I was like, yo, I'm DNice. Can you imagine?
Whole nother legacy going on right now. People call you Dice.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I'd be Dice at this point. I don't know if that would have worked for Club Quarantine. It's Dice.
I can't wait to get to that, by the way. Was it surreal for you, all this happening? Because at this point, 17, you're becoming DNice and you guys are starting to perform. Like,
yeah.
Could you see the future then?
I mean, no one could actually see the future, especially in terms of like hip hop, because hip hop was still kind of in its infancy.
Yeah.
You know, like we didn't know what this was gonna become. Yeah. You know, we didn't know hip hop would be in Vegas one day, or DJing would be at the White House. Like no one had a clue of what it was going to become. So to me, it was literally just fun. I was just flowing with it. Like, all right, cool, let's do it. You know, and I think the most beautiful part of the early parts of my journey was I never really took anything for granted. You know, like I still recall the very first time that I'd been on an airplane because of the music. Like, you know, we weren't on airplanes like that. Yep. You know, so to get on a plane to go and do a show in Rochester, New York, and going to be interviewed at WDKX. Like, I remember that stuff.
And you feel like a rock star in that moment.
Well, not really a rock star. You just feel kind of excited, like, oh, this is what we're doing. Oh, we're making money, even though we're making like $200 a show. But
you're more mature than I was. I'd have been like, yo, I made it, kid. But that would probably been my demise.
I was also young, though. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I was super young.
Yeah.
Like, I was into girls, but I didn't really have a girlfriend. Like, you know, like I was young. Like, I was really living the life of a kid who just kind of fell into this dream of like hip hop.
How did school play like a part of your?
School was always there, but I was kind of, you know, like in and out, to be honest with you. Like I was lucky to get out of that joint because it wasn't important to me anymore. You know, like I was really about this music dream. But I will say this, DJ Scott LaRock was like, yo, if you don't go to school, you can't be a part of the group.
God bless him.
You know, so I thank Scott for like instilling in me like the importance of education, because that's a lesson that I was able to, you know, kind of instill in my kid, you know, in both of my kids, you know what I mean? Like, so, but that was always an important part of the journey. And even outside of high school, and I went to college, but because of all of the lessons that I've learned along the way on this journey, I was never afraid to pick up a book and learn. Right. Like I was never afraid to go to the library. And when I tell you my journey I've been surrounded by so many good people. I mean, just to fast forward just a little bit for a moment of like, just because we're on this conversation, but like, look, when I was signed to a record company and I wanted to be free of the record company, one of the attorneys actually told me, he said, I know who you are, and you're a really intelligent young man. You know, you take this to your lawyer, he's going to charge you X amount of money to get out of it. He's like, but I know you. You can figure this out. And he gave me a list of books that I should read, that I should go to the library and read. This was the record company's attorney.
That's pretty incredible.
One of their attorneys. And I went to the library, did the research, read the books, and realized that I had signed my deal when I was like really young. No parent had ever seen it. And in many ways, that deal was illegal. And I was able to get out of that. And the crazy part is, even once that deal with the record company ended, I became friends with that attorney, but I also became friends with the former CEO of that record company as well. So there is, you know, I know they followed my whole journey, and, you know, I guess it kind of plays into the whole theme of your podcast of like, why not me? Like I've always seen myself as more than just a hip hop artist. You know, I see myself as like, you know, somewhat of a visionary. Like I always had these dreams of just doing things that was much bigger and not just be limited to the history or limited to being KRS-One's little brother. Like none of that made me happy because I had my own dreams and aspirations, and like I wanted to live through that. I wanted to live it out, and that's what kept me going.
Well, definitely you're doing that. But before we get to that, like talk to me a little bit about Scott. And obviously we lost him. Tell me about his passing and the circumstances around that and how it made you feel, and like that led you to create self-destruction.
Well, that incident didn't lead to self-destruction. The thing about DJ Scott LaRock, Scott was just this great man, and he was a great young man. It's unfortunate that he transitioned super young, was murdered, and for a long time I carried a weight, because I was young and he was coming to my aid for something that I had nothing to do with, of like when you're in the hood, which I lived in the Bronx. Not that all of the Bronx is the hood, but the area that I was in was, it was decent, but it was also rough, and near the projects, and when you have some level of fame, no matter how many records we've sold or whatever, we weren't making that kind of money, but we had fame.
Right.
And I was young. And with that comes young girls when I was a kid, and the girls like me, and I wasn't that type of kid, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't the kid with all of these girlfriends, like, at all. Like,
and then all of a sudden.
And even when the records were out, I wasn't like that.
Okay.
No, like, literally.
You're not that guy.
No, that's not who I was.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like,
sometimes you get a little weak at first, just because it's so fresh and new, and it's like coming at you.
Yeah, but when you gotta look at it like this. I came from a household full of women.
Yeah.
So then, my moral compass was just a little bit different. It wasn't like, I need 20 women around me to feel secure.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went from that into a conscious hip hop group. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, KRS was conscious. Yep. There was no coming around with a bunch of, just women like that. That wasn't the look for our group. That's not what we did it for. We were like B-boys, you know what I mean? Like, and we were all having fun. And, my first girlfriend, I was 16, dated her until I was like 17. And then I started making more music and traveling. And I would go on dates and flirt and all of that. But like, I was never really like, I never had like a whole bunch of girlfriends when I was younger. And by the time my first album came out, Call Me DNice, I was in a relationship, you know what I mean, for like 2 years.
It's probably better, to be honest.
No, look, I love my life, man. I have no regrets. I've had fun, but I know I've never done anything that was just crazy.
Like when the Me Too stuff started happening, you were sleeping good.
I was sleeping good.
You're like, I got nothing in my past they can come after me for.
Yeah. But a lot of that comes from having a relationship, like having the guidance of like smart older people. Mm-hmm. Like my friends, like even just recently, man, like one of my buddies who, he used to co-manage me with, I've always been my own manager, but he was like my co-manager. And if I would be in the studio writing a lyric, and if I wanted to be like, yo, this bitch was crazy to dump, he would stop me. Like, yo, you can't say that. That's not good. Because I was still young, you know what I mean? He was like, you can't say that. If you're gonna say something, you got to change the words and say it like that.
Is that guy still with us?
Yeah, he's still here. That's my boy. I called him the other day. I was like, man, thank you for never allowing me to say anything crazy. Because there's nothing in terms of like the music that I made that you can look back and be like, wow, I can't believe he said that. Like, because I've always had the guidance of people that actually cared.
And you listened.
And I listened.
Which is more than half the battle. So then tell me, how did self-destruction ultimately come about in the Stop the Violence movement? So
self-destruction came about because we were on tour. It was a tour called the Dope Jam Tour with who was headlining? Eric B. and Rakim, nice. Dougie Fresh, Kool Mo D, BDP, Ice-T, and was Biz on that tour? Biz Marquee. It's called the Dope Jam Tour.
Yep.
And we were doing a show in Nassau Coliseum. And, back then, all of the B-boys, everyone, we were like real deal early on B-boys. Everyone wanted their rope chains on. And this young guy was there at the show with his rope chain on and with his girlfriend. And someone took his chain and murdered him, and that prompted us to make Self-Destruction. And Self-Destruction was based on a song from our second BDP album. The song was called Stop the Violence. Mm-hmm. Karis was always conscious. And, even with the battle raps, he was still always about doing conscious music, and we ended up, when that incident happened, we kind of formed this collective. We sat down at Jive Records, did this meeting and decided that we were going to put this record together spearheaded by Ann Carly and Nelson George.
Yeah, I
He
love
was
Nelson
writing.
George.
Yeah, Nelson was awesome. He was at Billboard at the time. At the time I was 18 years old, and they wanted the Bomb Squad to produce it, but to KRS's credit, he was like, "No, D got a beat. No, he got it." Because most of the people didn't know, like, when I was watching Scott in the studio, I learned how to produce records, and I started putting that song together, and I put that record together in 2 weeks, recorded everyone except for Public Enemy and Dougie Fresh. But everyone else I was in the studio for, recorded the vocals and mixed it myself. That record came out and we sold nearly 1 million copies back then. And yeah, that was my first gold plaque for producing.
So now you're a producer and you're a lyricist and artist.
Well, I wasn't a lyricist yet.
Okay. So
I was more so a producer, and then at the time, because Scott had transitioned at that point, and I became the DJ for the group.
Okay.
But I always wanted to, my thing was, well, why am I not rapping on the songs? I want to rap too. I can write rhymes.
Yeah.
And then I just started like writing lyrics, and Jive they gave me a small deal. It wasn't like the deal they gave KRS or Tribe, but it was more so like, yo, this is a little bro deal.
Yeah.
It didn't matter to me, bro. I just felt happy that
And you're in the mix now.
I was in the mix, man. I think my first album budget was like $25,000, man.
Oh shit.
It was so terrible.
And what's your relationship now with KRS-One? Like, you guys
we don't see each other that often.
No?
If I see him, it's always gonna be mutual love, I'm trying to think, man. I haven't seen him since Club Quarantine. I believe, it was my second CQ show, and we sold out Brooklyn Prospect Park, and I was like, man, I can't bring Club Quarantine to New York City and not have KRS on the show.
Yeah,
because it was important to me to show my evolution to where I went from this young kid in BDP to someone who can now sell tickets and headline and then bring out my friends, So, and he agreed to do the show with me.
What a cool feeling to be able to go back to your hometown at any age and just fill the room and just be like, these are the streets I've been running around my whole fucking life.
Yeah, bro. It's fucking crazy.
And look where we are now.
Yeah.
I learned something coming into this interview about you that I actually didn't know, which was you discovered Kid Rock?
Oh.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
How did you find him?
Kid Rock was like, he was a guy who came up to us at our show in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And like, I would always listen to any new artist, and I thought he was dope. He was a straight MC at the time. He wasn't, and by the way, this is no disrespect to like Vanilla Ice or anything like that.
Nope.
I'm just saying it because at the time there weren't a lot of young white boys. Like, we had Beasties and Beasties killed it, but there weren't a whole lot, Sure. It was more, Vanilla Ice, and you had Kid Rock and you had Everlast, and but there weren't a lot, and I thought he was dope. He was from Detroit. I was like, oh, this dude is dope. And then I ended up taking his music to Jive, and then Jive signed him. And his first album was produced by multiple people, but two of the people that I produced and wrote 2 songs on the first album, and Too Short did the same thing. Too Short wrote 2 songs and produced 2 songs on his first album. But look, here's my thing, man. We don't speak to each other now, and it's been years, and it's kind of sad that it's all over politics and political views, and I never really cared for who someone voted for.
Yeah.
But it is kind of like it's kind of moral compass who you vote for during this particular time.
Absolutely.
And it's like, when you start like spewing this crazy rhetoric and you kind of represent that, it just makes it kind of made me feel like, man, who is this person? Like, that's not the same person that I met, when I was younger. And when I say we were like really like brothers, I mean, I worked on that first album. Then when I toured, I did a 70 city tour with Ice Cube and Too Short. And because I worked on Kid Rock's album and we were both on Jive, I let him ride on my tour bus and we did the 70 cities together.
Wow.
Like initially he and his boys were driving their little Nissan, and then that joint broke down after seven cities. And I was like, yo, bro, you can just leave the car and just ride with me. And we ended up touring together. And then, years later, I lost everything. And he was one person that actually helped me out, when I wanted to start my web development company in the late 90s. At that point, he had sold 10 million albums, and the dude just sent me a check for X amount of dollars and was like, hey, once you get this off, pay me back when you can.
That's awesome.
And I paid him back every dime, and we were still boys. We would always speak to each other during Christmas time, like, since back then, but it wasn't until, the recent elections, and because of kind of what he represents and where I am in life, I don't want that kind of energy. Not that I didn't want his friendship. Like,
right.
This is my guy since we're kids, but it's that energy that comes along with everything right now where, one day I had to reach out and be like, yo, you know what?
Oh, so you did have a...
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. I was like, you know what? This doesn't work for me anymore.
It's a polarizing time.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that it's left or right? Like, what side are you on?
It's funny because I actually never really talked about that part of it.
Yeah.
To say why. And I think at this point it is kind of important to have that conversation. And it's really what's interesting about it is we met up before the fallout, and I was trying to explain to him where we are, like where the world is. And I was like, look, man, the things that you do, to you, it may seem like, oh, you're just supporting someone. But to the rest of the world and to the people who are actual racists, you look like the hero.
Yep.
And he's like, nah, it's not like that. And I kid you not, no longer than 10 minutes later, one of the guys that owned the bar that I frequented for years told me in front of him, I don't like black people. No lie. And then Bob pushes him out of the way. And then I was like, yo, this is what I'm saying. This is what it represents during this time.
We said it in front of you.
Yo, bro, in front of me.
They're so emboldened these days, too.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, I live in Texas, and my wife is Caucasian, so I'm raising these biracial kids, but they're black. We know that. And I was walking in the park with my two sons, and our nanny was with us, and this older white lady had a big dog on a long leash, and I helped her not get dragged by her dog. And all she really had to say was, thank you. And instead she goes, are those your boys? And I was like, yeah, yes, ma'am, those are my sons. And she goes, what are you going to do about that hair?
Wow.
But in that moment, I realized I've seen that video.
Yeah.
And I'm the bad guy. So I just said, I was shocked by how emboldened she was and comfortable she was to say that. But I was just like, we're new here to town and we're going to figure it all out. Where are you from? California. I hope you're a conservative. Well, ma'am, look at me and look at you. I think we've had different experiences. Is it safe to say maybe I feel differently about politically than you? I suppose. How do you feel about your body, ma'am, and the right to make choices for yourself, for your body? Do you think that's your right? She goes, possibly. And in that moment, I was like, have a beautiful day. And I walked away with my kids. But the point of it is, to your point, it's like these people right now in the current climate of this country,
yes,
on both sides, quite frankly,
yes,
are just so comfortable being, I guess, themselves, right?
Because that's truly who they are.
That's truly who they are. So we want people to be their true selves. We preach be your true self. But right now, it's like dangerous in a way because you never know how someone's going to receive information and how it's going to pop off. But anyway, when you said that, it triggered me to think about that story. I'm sorry about you and your friend, kid, because I know chosen family again, and I always believe in equity in relationships, and the more time you spend with someone, the more equitable that relationship is. So when you have to kind of walk away from it, which I've had to do similarly with some of my friends for the same reasons, it's hard.
And that's why I'm always honest when I say we really looked out for each other for a great part of the journey.
Yeah.
I looked out for him in the beginning, and when I needed him, he looked out for me. And it's just crazy that you can get to this point during a particular climate in the world where you have to make a choice.
Yeah.
And it's not something that happened overnight. You know, it was gradual, you know, like, wow, this may not be it. This may not work, you know. But, you know, at the end of the day, man, I'm happy with every decision that I've made in my life, you know, good and bad. I live with it. I keep going. I keep pushing myself, and that's it, man. You know, my uncle told me, man, this was like in the late 90s, I thought that I wanted to still be a rapper.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the world stopped clapping for me and I went 6 or 7 years without having a deal and trying to figure this out, I was scared, you know, and I didn't know what to do. I ran out of money. I had, you know, a small child to take care of. You know, I just, you know, I didn't know what to do, man. I called my uncle up and I wanted to start my business. And, you know, I told him that I still love music. And then my uncle told me the story about being young and having an opportunity to play baseball in the Negro League, but he didn't play because he and my aunt were having a kid. And he said, you know, he always wondered what his life would have been like had he played in the Negro League. And he said, you never want to live life with regrets. Not to say that he has any regrets, but right. You just don't want to live life with regrets. And that just stuck with me. And I try to do as much as I can to never have that feeling that I regret anything. And I promise you, I don't regret anything, because it just led me to like this amazing experience, you know, to where I am in my life right now, Beryl. And I'm like really living this great experience, you know, like this resurgence of DNice, but it's not based on a hit record.
No,
it's not based on a hit television show. It's about what I poured into the world, and I only had that to pour out because what everyone else poured into me. And that right there, that feeling and that love, I think will just continue to take me a long way.
We're about to get to quarantine, but before we do, another big Why Not Me moment for you is this moment in your life where you start the ad agency and you pivot into that space. Like, what is that? And you still have your agency.
No. I stopped the creative services agency, man, when I really focused on DJing.
But what's your business? You have a business now, right? Like
DNice it's literally just my kind of management company and the company that I use to do partnerships with other people.
Okay.
You know, the journey that I was on just allowed me to understand how to work these deals out and know what to ask for. So through DNice, you know, majority of my concerts are produced through my own company.
Okay.
You know, so from Carnegie Hall to, you know, Hollywood Bowl to, you know, doing New Year's Eve at Walt Disney Concert Hall, you know, Kennedy Center Opera House. All those things were produced by DNice.
Okay.
Because I always had this vision. So what's interesting is this. I moved to Los Angeles in the end of 2018 because I was trying to phase out of DJing. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get into film and television production. So I was always fascinated by you and the relationship that you and John, you know, that you guys had together. Because I was like, wait, I didn't know the back end of the relationship, the backstory of the relationship.
Yeah.
I just knew I had never heard of you. Mm-hmm. And here you are like, oh yeah, John and I got a production company and, you know, we're about to produce blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, that's actually dope that someone who is on this high level of entertainment in terms of like his music career is still willing to just partner with someone that I've never heard of, even though you may have had all of these credits in the world, mm-hmm. and I'm sure you do. But I'm just saying from the outside, I was like, man, there is hope. There is a way to partner with someone. There is a way to find people that believe in what you want to do. So my journey brought me to LA to do film and television. Mm-hmm. I did not know a year and a half later that, you know, I was phasing out of DJing. I actually did not like the venues, didn't like the clubs. I was tired of negotiating these deals with people, and it was just like to try to prove my worth. Well, what do you mean you don't want to pay me, You're paying that person X amount of dollars, but you don't want to pay me.
Yeah.
And I got tired of fighting. I was like, you know what? You won. I'm good. 2020 was my last year of DJing. That was the goal. I was like, I'm going to produce movies. I'm going to get into music supervision, blah, blah, blah. That's what I'm going to do.
You would say that to us a little bit at some of John's house parties.
Yep. I'm like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit.
Before you get into that, I just got to say, and I still want to talk about photography, but that day, the first club quarantine, obviously no one knew what was about to pop off. But I can tell you definitively, I was one of the first people to log on that day.
On which day?
The first one. And I was in LA.
When I was just telling stories, or the first one when I was DJing?
When you were DJing.
Oh, was that the second Saturday night?
Yeah. And when everyone showed up.
Yeah, the Saturday, yes.
That was I didn't realize it was the one before that.
Yeah.
I thought that was the first joint. But all I can tell you is I was like, yo, DNice is doing this thing, and like we're just here, like I know he's fun. Like, let's just fuck it. And we clicked it. And all of a sudden, you just like, the vibe was right. And all of a sudden, so-and-so's popping on and such and Michelle Obama. And I'm like, what in the fuck is going on here? Like, I couldn't, what's happening? And it was like, the soundtrack of that day became what informed so many people moving forward, because it gave us like light and energy and hope and like fun, you know, and it gave us connectivity again to each other, you know, because it gave us all something we could share together and talk about. So, hey, thank you for that, because you really like, people throw words around and say people did this and that, but you really changed lives that day, because people were sad and depressed and at home and tired of looking at their loved ones only. You know what I mean?
So part of it too, man.
It was a beautiful thing. So just talk to me about the process of club quarantine and the thinking behind it then.
Yes.
But now it's a business. Like, just tell me about that day one into like where you are now.
I mean, well, in the beginning, it was just me. I started on a Tuesday on March 17th. You know, it was really just about me. I went on to just tell stories, you know, to share some stories about songs that I produced. Similar conversation of what we're having right now.
Right.
I just wanted to have it on Instagram Live. No one was really using IG Live like that. It was kind of a feature that was phasing out of IG, because they were focusing on like IGTV and like, so it was like kind of this little platform. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll go tell some stories and play a couple of songs. And then I noticed like 300 of my friends were in there, and I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm like, yo, shouting everybody out, like, oh, Chuck Bone, what's up, bro? I didn't know these people were even following me. But what I learned was that because I had never used Instagram Live until that point, it notified, like, whenever you go live for the first time, it'll notify all of your followers that, oh, he's live for the first time.
Right.
So it notified my followers, and, you know, had limited amount of followers, but they were all like my friends in there, and it made me feel connected. And then I started, a couple of days later, I started DJing. But the funny part is, I called our friend up, Hassan Smith.
Oh, I love Haas.
Yep, I called Haas up, and I just had this idea. I was like, I see John is like he's playing piano, and they got this feature where you could split the screen. Could you think John would come over and say hi to the people on my IG Live? Nobody was ever splitting the screen. Like, nobody was doing that.
Yeah.
It really didn't become a thing until COVID.
Until you did it, yeah.
So he was like, I'll ask John. Called John. Meanwhile, I called Big Daddy Kane. I hit Dave Chappelle up. I was like, yo, they got this split the screen feature. I don't know about that. I don't know about splitting the screen. This is literally, Dougie Fresh will tell you. I called Doug. I'm like, Doug, they got this. You can split the screen. Why don't you come on and say hi to people? That doesn't sound good. I don't want to do that. That don't sound splitting the screen.
Yeah.
And so the first person that went live with me was I'll Be Sure. Because he said yes, and then Haas hit me back and said, oh, John said he'll do it. And then me and John went live, and this was a very important moment, because I'm a tech guy. That's what I was doing for like 7 years, building websites from everyone from Alicia Keys, you know, the Diary of Alicia Keys, to like, I built those sites, you know what I mean? So I'm a tech guy to the core. And when John went live, he had Luna on his neck, on his shoulders.
Right.
And we're just talking, and then I saw the numbers spike up. And it went from my little 400 people to like 6,000 people. But I'm talking to John, but I'm fascinated. I was fascinated by the numbers. So I was like, yo, it's telling his people that he's in here. I'm going to get more followers. That's what my thought process was.
Yeah,
I was
smart.
like, oh, I'm going to get more followers. And then I talked to him. Then I went live with someone else. Then I went live with someone else. And it was just exciting to do that. And then,
so he's really pivotal in this.
Bro, no, 100.
I don't think he knows that.
I told him that.
Did you? Oh, you did?
Maybe he don't remember it.
He probably doesn't.
But I literally told him, like, bro, like the John Legend, that part was so important.
Big cosign.
Because not only just being cosign in terms of like artistry, because then it made other artists want to rock with me.
Right.
But seeing the possibility of like inviting people on, and then their audience knows, and hopefully, you try to retain a percentage of their audience. Hell, 5% would have just made me happy. But because I was playing music, a lot of the audience stayed to listen to me.
Yeah.
And then they came back again. And then by the time you went on, that Saturday.
Yeah, it was a Saturday.
That Saturday was the game changer.
I just couldn't believe what was happening.
I couldn't believe it either, man. I was getting offers from people Saturday morning, like, we saw what you did last night. I got X amount of dollars and 6-figure this to come put this in there. And I was like, I can't. That was the important part, because I said no. And I said no, not that I didn't need or want the money, but I was like, man, the world stopped. The world stopped at that point. This was literally 5 days into the pandemic. I can't look like I'm the only person making money. That's not going to feel good to people.
Yeah.
What felt good was that we were all doing this together. And because I did it that way, the amount of love I received is just different, because I don't think people would have received Club Quarantine the same way if every 10 minutes I was like, hey, why don't you buy this?
Yeah.
Then it would just felt like a commercial.
No, you played it perfectly.
I don't think people would have resonated with people, had I held up a bottle of anything.
Because people are like not working, losing jobs, and if you were profiting at that point, it would have felt a little different. But you weren't, and it was for the culture.
And the best thing that I ever did, because it kept me doing it because I loved it. I didn't feel obligated. I didn't feel like I had to do it because someone's like, all right, it's time for you to go on. Like, no, I would get up, and I was quarantined alone, and I felt just like everyone else, and I wanted to feel connected. I felt sad. I was like, no, I got to play some music. And it wasn't just about the music.
You would go.
I would go, bro. I mean, election day, I went for 19 and a half hours straight. 19 and a half consecutive hours playing music. From the time the polls opened on the East Coast to the time the polls closed on the West or in Hawaii, whichever polls closed the latest, and then I kept going.
After that.
Because I was like, I had that rush, and just kept going, man. 19 and a half hour DJ set. That's crazy.
That is crazy. And now it's over 100,000 viewers or something. I got like a million, more way more than 100,000.
It just looked like it was 100,000 people, but concurrently, like, it was over like 4 million people.
Yeah, listening. I was like, it was so many motherfuckers. Yeah, that was incredible.
Like 4 million people listening to me.
You take some of the dopest photos ever. Like, I've seen a lot of your work, and it's just so impressive and beautiful and personal.
Yeah.
Tell me about your journey into photography and like the importance it still plays in your life today.
So when
and when you taking pictures of me.
Oh, we got to do that. I'm about to take a picture of you anyway with my phone because I love this new phone. But
I saw your kid and play picture.
I'm like, the photography journey, man, it's like two parts to it. Well, it's multiple parts to the photography journey. I'll say that. When I was younger, I borrowed a friend's camera when I went on our first BDP tour, the Dope Jam tour, and I was so young that I didn't know that the value of the photograph was in the negative and not the print. Mm-hmm. So those negatives, they're just gone. Because once I had the print, I didn't care about the negatives, which is so crazy, bro. But that was because I was young and didn't know. Once I got the print of it, it was like, oh.
Here it is.
And then years would go by, those prints are gone, you know? And then when my rap career ended, I literally had nothing tangible to one day show my future kids. And I said, if I ever had a chance to see the world again, that I would always have a camera with me,
Right.
that I always take pictures. And I was fortunate enough to, 10 years later to get back into the business because of my web development company. I shoot mainly with Leica cameras. I don't have a deal with them. I'm not sponsored by them, but I shoot with Leica cameras because of one particular photographer, Gordon Parks. I'd met Gordon Parks. I was photographed by him. Yeah, we did this shoot in like 98. It was in the 90s. He recreated that Great Day of Jazz, like the Great Day in Harlem, like the jazz version of it. But he recreated it with all hip hop artists for Double XL magazine. And, Gordon, it's Great Day in Harlem, like all these rappers, everyone from Shaq to Fushnickers, Common, Pete Rock, CL Smooth, and, Fat Joe. And like, this was crazy. I'm in it, but I was, it was, I'm in the back somewhere, but it was like, I think right now, they would probably have me a little closer, but then in that picture, I was
but you're in it. You're in it, though. That's all that counts.
But no, it was. But I was fascinated because I was watching. I'm always about learning, bro. That's what my whole life has been, like not being afraid to learn. But I would watch him still load his film back, and at the time when he was younger, he was shot with like different cameras, Polaroid, Leica, whatever. But this particular shoot, he was shooting with a Hasselblad, so he was loading the back of his Hassie, and I was like, man, I think he was in his 70s at the time. I was like, man, I want to be like that when I'm older, like to still have this love of the craft. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I can rap when I'm 70 or DJ when I'm 70, but photography, taking pictures and exhibitions and showing the work of the journey, I was like, man, I want to be like that guy. So that was always a focus for me. Like, I gotta find a camera that I love, and Leicas were kind of expensive. And when I was building these websites, a client had delivered some images that I didn't think that they were great enough for like the type of website I wanted to build for them.
Right.
So I was just like, hey, give me a little budget of like $1,500. I'll go and hire a photographer. I got an idea. And instead of hiring a photographer, I took the budget and I went and bought a camera with it.
Nice.
And then bought a Canon EOS 3 film camera, hired a model for like $200, like male models, like men loungewear, and went to Central Park and walked around New York City, just kind of getting this urban kind of landscape, photographing him just with black and white film. And that's how I built the website. I've always been like fascinated with black and white. And after the images, it came out really good. And because of that, I decided that I wanted to go to school for photography.
Oh, wow.
So this was early 2000. I went to a place in New York called the International Center of Photography. ICP is what they're known as.
Okay.
So I went to ICP for like a year, and then just under a year, because I was still building a lot of websites, but I was taking all those classes and going and learning how to process film and composition, because one day I wanted to be able to have the conversation about photography and actually know what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like I really do respect the craft. And because of that, it took me on this journey of, shooting album covers from everyone from Lil Scrappy to Carl Thomas and Belle Biv DeVoe. And like, I was just shooting for everyone, bro. Because of that, after shooting all of these projects, and, I ended up receiving a call from Tyra Banks. And Tyra is like, hey, I want you to, I love your black and whites and the way you shoot. I want you to just do a day in the life of me.
All in black and white?
No, just the way I, just
your
kind
style.
of like documentary style.
Yeah.
And I shot like 8 mini kind of vignettes of her, like these little interview pieces. And so I started doing that. And then after she loved it, then she said, hey, I want you to shoot for my talk show. I got someone I want you to photograph. And then I arrived, and this person was coming out of the dressing room, and the producer was like, DNice, you have 5 minutes with Halle Berry.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh.
That's all I need.
He said, that's all I need. Then I photographed Halle, and then in another episode, she interviewed 50 Cent, and I photographed 50. Then I ended up shooting 50's Reebok campaign. His vitamin water campaign.
Wow.
No, it was actually his Reebok campaign, but he featured his vitamin water in it. Okay. And then Tyra hired me to be a feature photographer on America's Next Top Model. And then I ended up doing that. And after that, I knew that that wasn't the type of photography I wanted I didn't want to be that kind of photographer.
Right.
And it was really because like soon after I had met, I just started meeting all of the photographers that I admired, you know, and I knew that I wanted to just be like more kind of story-driven, documenting, you know, life and culture and hip-hop culture. It wasn't about fashion for me.
It's like an Anthony Mandler type or maybe a Nabil
Not
type?
Not necessarily Mandler. You know, he's one of my brothers, and that's still, you know, I mean, his work is still like fashion and, you know.
That's true, more glossy. Yeah.
More glossy, but it's more like Jim Marshall.
Got you.
You know, more like James Van Der Zee, where when you look back at a time, you'll be able to like just imagine what that time is going to be like. And I chose kind of music, entertainment, and everywhere I go, I just have like this like a camera with me, and then all of the artists, they know that I have a camera with me, and they're like, oh, let's get some pictures.
It's funny, I collect some Kwame Braithwaite photography.
It's dope.
And I get a lot of that from you. Like, I mean, because you're like, to your point, you're there with the camera. Like, not to stage a shot, but to capture a moment.
Yep.
And it's very similar to Braithwaite, a lot of his stuff. So when I see your stuff, it just takes me back to Kwame. So again.
And that's what I love. You know, I was looking at, early this morning, I was looking at some images of like Pharrell from 2013. And because I always had access to people and, you know, and even with that access, I was never disrespectful.
Right.
I was always, and part of even shooting with a camera like that is that it's so vintage looking. They still use like the same kind of body for like, you know, the last 70, almost 75 years. So it's not an intrusive camera. You know, I don't feel like the paparazzi when I'm using it. So it makes people feel safe, you know, as opposed to pulling out this big zoom lens and you're like in someone's face and it's like, it's not personal enough. So for me, it's like, it's very intimate. And I love photography probably more than I love music.
Wow.
And that says a lot.
That does, yeah.
Because you're gonna only remember the party.
Mm-hmm.
The next generation is not gonna remember that DNice was at this hot party for the Oscars. They will read about Club Quarantine.
Sure.
But they will forever see these images. They will forever see the images, bro. And like, I know that, and that's why I take it seriously.
Legacy.
It is true legacy, and it's my passion.
And are your kids artists like you? Are they into the whole deal? Or
no, my kids are all about education, man. You know, my oldest daughter is an attorney. She went to Spelman undergrad, and she went to Penn State Law.
I went to Penn State.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man.
Not for law school.
Yeah, man. And then you know, after practicing for 3 years, she you know, joined my DNice team. She does legal for me, and then you know, and then my other daughter, she's still like way too young. You know, she's 13. She kind of knows what she wants to do, but between school, she goes to a fantastic school here in Los Angeles, and she plays tennis every day. She's on the tennis team.
Let me ask you, I have a 4-year-old son, a 3-year-old son, and a 1-year-old daughter. I love my sons like to the end of the earth. But my daughter,
oh yeah,
it's different. So do you have any advice for me as a girl dad, just starting the journey? Like,
I mean, I think the relationship that I have with my daughters has been one that's been extremely open and honest. You know, like my job is not to be this kind of dictator, this kind of helicopter parent, because that's not how I grew up. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted to have a relationship with my kids where they felt inspired to do whatever they wanted to do. Like before my daughter went to law school, I never told her that I wanted to be an attorney and not me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I know that I wasn't the influence on why she went to law school. It was truly what her passion was. But for me, it was just kind of beautiful to see, like, man, maybe maybe the universe didn't have that for me. Clearly, I'm not an attorney, but maybe it was kind of like just putting it out there, like to when your kid is out there to support that dream, you know. And I love that. I love the relationship, man. And I would just say, like, I'll give you an example. I was dropping my daughter off to school today, and we couldn't get the Starbucks app to work. It wouldn't pick up the location that we always go to. We use the same app every day.
Right.
For some reason, maybe they weren't accepting orders, but that one location wasn't showing up. But we time everything out in terms of school drop-off. So, like, usually if she wants something from there, then time it out, pick it up, and boom, go to school.
Yep.
Now it's throwing the timing off because now we got to physically go in there because that's what she wanted.
Right.
And if that's what she wants, cool, because I know it's going to help her with her day. She's going to feel happy. Like, man, so also have to let the dog out. So all these things happening.
Full house.
So, she was supposed to get the car and she didn't walk out of the door while I'm letting the dog out, and she's kind of standing there, but she was moving slowly. And then I was like, "Are you okay?" And I could see the disappointment of like the way I spoke to her.
Wow.
Even though I wasn't aggressive,
right? It
was more so like, "Are you okay? Like, are you tired? Like, you probably should have gone to bed a little bit early."
Right.
But then when I arrived at Starbucks, and as I was going into Starbucks, I thought about it, and I was like, man, maybe I probably wasn't aggressive, but maybe I was a little too aggressive for her.
Right.
And I thought about it, and then I walked back over to the car, and I apologized, and I was just like, I apologize for that. Like, if you felt that way, because I saw that look in her face. And my daughter, we have this great relationship, man. And I'm very patient with my kids, and I always want to be able to have that open dialogue and also lead by example to show my kid that even if you make a mistake, even if you probably don't understand the mistakes sometimes, you may hurt someone's feeling, but you still have to listen. And if you are wrong, you should be willing to apologize. And so, like, there's always these kind of little lessons that I feel that are important in raising a child, and especially a girl. Like, you don't want to raise a kid where I'm, like, screaming at my daughter, like,
never that.
That's not my thing.
Never that. So I guess the takeaway is to be present.
Always be present.
To listen and to understand that it's not really about you.
No.
I'm learning. I'm learning. So we're going to go to this fun stuff right now. I just like to ask some fun, silly questions. Let's just have some fun. So, best pickup line that you ever used that worked?
Jeez. Best pickup line. I don't really have a pickup line, though. I'll be honest with you.
So it's a vibe that you get, like...
I mean, if there was a pickup line, it would probably be music-based.
Right.
Like, hey, like, I don't know. I don't know what it would be. Like,
for the record, I could never answer that question.
Yeah,
I've never used a pickup line in my life, but...
Yeah, I'm like, there's no... I feel like the women I've dated in my life were... I think they were intelligent enough to, like, not allow a pickup line to work.
Unfortunately, except for my wife, probably the girls I dated, it would have worked, but until now. What's your favorite curse word, and use it in a sentence?
Motherfucker. That would be my sentence.
Fuck and the derivatives of fuck have been, like, the most popular answer from everyone.
Because I would say that, like, if something happened, I would definitely be like, man, this motherfucker, yo.
Yep. As a music guy, playlists are a big thing for us common folk, but as a music guy, like, I'm curious what your playlist is. Like, if you have one you're listening to right now, or favorite artist you're listening to right now in the car.
Oh man, I don't even DJ from a playlist.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the beauty of growing up and knowing so many records. It's like I can look at a crowd and, like, oh, I'm gonna go there with it. So even as a DJ, I'm literally like 5 to 10 songs ahead of people because I'm trying to weave these songs together, but just based on, like, memory of, like, what the feeling is.
Right.
So I don't really have a playlist. What I've been listening to lately is, man, I've actually been listening to a lot of old school, like really old school, like that.
Do you ever listen to old BDP stuff?
No.
No? Never your stuff?
You know what's so interesting is that those songs don't really resonate with me right now.
Right.
Not that they weren't great songs.
Right.
But, like, a specific time in hip-hop, to me, because I've been on this kind of DJ and R&B journey and, like, this kind of, like, pop, jazz and very musical journey, that when I listen to, like, old school hip hop that's kind of stripped down the way our stuff was, like, B-boy, very, like, samples, it doesn't feel the same to me right now. It kind of feels old.
Right.
I'll listen to it if I'm like watching someone's video, like, oh, that's cool, But to my core, I was just having this kind of conversation last night on just like that time in hip hop and why West Coast and Atlanta at the time was more like Outkast, and because they were so like heavily music driven, and like bass lines, like and Eric B and Rakim, they were like that too, like Paid in Full, it was all bass line. They would have someone playing keys and like more music, live music driven. But our stuff was kind of stripped down.
Were like that.
It's kind of sample driven. So, but like I've been listening to like, this is so crazy, like the stylistics, bro. Like
that's dope.
Yeah, I've been putting that on like in the car.
That's
like,
dope. I love that.
I typically don't listen to music at home.
Okay, that's it. By bringing it home, I guess. By bringing your work home. What was your first kiss?
Wow, my first kiss was. I mean, you need to know the names and everything.
No.
Oh, okay.
You can say first name, Sally.
No, it was a girl named Rebecca.
Okay.
Yep. Rebecca was her name, but we used to call her Shami.
Yep.
And I remember the first kiss because she was like my family friend.
Right.
And we lived across the street from each other.
Is
in the
she
Bronx.
still a part of your life? Do you ever see her anymore?
No, I haven't seen her in like literally in decades.
Would you rather give up food or sex?
I'll just be starving, bro.
That's the first time I asked that question, I think.
I'm hungry, man.
I'd be skinny and fucking. What's like everyone talks about love language. Do you know your love language? Do you have a love language?
Yeah, I did the test and it's touch, words of affirmation was high up.
That's big for me.
Yeah, and then I can't remember that. I just remember words of affirmation was number one, but touch, because I really do. It's the craziest thing. I like being next to my partner.
Mm-hmm.
I like that comfort, that feeling of it, and yeah, that's that. So that was high up for me as well.
Touch is great to that togetherness, that safety in a way that you feel. When your time has come and you're no longer here, what would you love to see on your tombstone?
Man, that's a pretty heavy question to ask a 54-year-old man. Hopefully I'll be living until I'm like at least 85.
You got decades left, man.
I got decades left, but I hope I'm not remembered just for because I know a lot of people mainly like in this time really know and appreciate me for Club Quarantine. Like I know that. I don't want that on my tombstone.
Right.
I want something to be more of a reflection of like what my overall life has been like, and that I cared, and that I cared, that I inspired, and that I've lived.
Yeah. Like
it's more about that for me. It's not about any one particular thing. It's not just about the music or it's not about the photography. It's that I truly, to my core, bro, I care about people. And, I've definitely lived. I've never worked for anyone, good and bad, ups and downs, ebbs and flows with it, going a decade with no health insurance, because I couldn't afford it, but just never giving up on a dream, and because of that, I know I've inspired people. Yeah.
So give me 10 words or less. How do you summarize that for your tombstone?
For my tombstone, a man who lived a life of passion, caring, and love.
That I love. I was going to ask you one more question, but I think that's a really beautiful way to end. Derek Jones, DNice,
yes, sir.
Cultural icon. Thank you very much for doing the Why Not Me podcast with me, Mike Jackson. I appreciate you taking my call. I appreciate you saying yes right away. And I look forward to the next 50 years. And just keep going.
Thank you, brother.
All right, bro.
Great to be here. Peace.